Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we have Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we also have a gentleman by the name of Johnny Rios. Johnny, what's up?
What up, boys? Good to see you.
How you doing?
I'm great, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Got your
Happy to be
coffee?
here. I do. Thank you, sir.
That's Kirkland coffee.
I appreciate the class.
So maybe we'll have Death Wish coffee here at some point relatively soon. So, what do you think of Death Wish coffee, Ben?
I like coffee.
Have you had Death Wish?
I have not tried Death Wish.
I have. It's good.
Keith drinks it all the time.
Yeah.
My tech. Mm-hmm. He's swears by it.
Yeah.
They got it Publix.
Yep. And I think Costco. We were just talking before recording that you need to get a Costco membership, Benjamin.
Yes, I think so.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, it's info@realrecoverytalk.com, and ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, Ben?
Yes, sir. That's the message.
That's the plan. All right, so as you can see to my left, possibly your right, or I don't know. We have 3 camera angles now, so just staring at you right in your face is Johnny Rios, and Johnny is somebody that I've known not well, but like I don't even know, like acquaintance, or like we've known each other kind of in passing and stuff.
Same industry, same space.
And ran into Johnny at actually a Christmas party. Pretty cool, man. I'll say, and we're gonna get to all that stuff as we go, but I thought it would be a good idea to have you come on the podcast, not only to talk about your experience with working in substance abuse treatment, but also what you're doing now, which I find fascinating, bringing up in particular men and, pouring into their lives and showing, I guess, men how to be better men, husbands,
The warrior
fathers.
mindset.
Yeah. And this is right up Ben's alley.
Oh, I love this. I'm like chomping at the bit right now.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny? You mentioned how you know Johnny. Like, I've literally heard his name. I was just counting on my fingers. For 8 years, I've heard your name nonstop, and we've never crossed paths. It's the craziest thing. But you, at one point, you were doing adventure groups for Rock before I was here.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we were walking through the hall, and
I took a lot of those pictures, yeah.
Some of the pictures that we have up are from him.
Oh, nice. Well, that's cool.
So he's like, "Oh, those are my paddle boards."
Yeah. So, Johnny, you are a licensed mental health counselor, right? Through the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
And obviously have worked in substance abuse for a long time. And then now you're doing private practice.
Correct.
And the other stuff you're doing, which I don't want to say because I don't want to butcher it. You know, it's so we'll get to that. But
Cool. Let's
just start off with kind of your substance abuse background in terms of a therapist and stuff. And what was it primarily like? What were some of the challenges that you had to deal with on a daily basis? And, what were some of the things that really brought you joy when working in that field? And then we'll probably talk a little bit about like why you got out of it and stuff like that.
Sure.
Why'd you get into it though, too?
Yeah, so my grandfather was a heroin addict. He actually contracted HIV through needles and died a rough death. But and then most of my mom's side struggles to this day with heavy addiction. So I mean, family background. I myself wrestled with a lot of hard stuff in my early 20s. A lot of binge drinking, but I also had a real target and a focus to play professional soccer, and that mojo, that juice really carried me through a lot of shit. So I was able to play Division I for 4 years, and played overseas in Europe for a couple seasons. And that, I mean, having a mission, having a target like that really kept me on the straight and narrow path for a bit. But anyways, when that ended, I'm kind of back to the drawing board trying to figure out what my next mission is. And also at the time, my wife was like, listen, you need something new. You need to target something. You need a steady job. So I ended up getting a job at a treatment center. I'd always had an interest in people helping. and had an undergrad in psychology. So I took a job as a tech and fell in love with the industry, fell in love with the clientele, fell in love with all of it, man. The urinalysis testing, driving clients around, shooting the shit, all that stuff, man, And then met a lot of therapists through that process, and that piqued my interest. So I went back to school, got my master's in counseling psychology, worked in a plethora of industry treatment centers here locally in Palm Beach County, but also in Nashville, Tennessee. And over the course of some time, man, I think as you do, I think one of the main goals of life is to grow, right? So I started to outgrow my positions, as a primary therapist, and I started to want to launch and do my own thing. And I remember telling my wife that my natural desire to be at the clinic that I was working at had just kind of died. It wasn't that I wasn't interested in the clientele and the people or my colleagues. I just could tell a shift was coming, and that's when I decided to make the leap into private practice. And I broadened the scope of practice. My background's in athletics, so I started seeing a lot of athletes who are trying to go to the next level, whether they're high-level high school kids who want to go to play D1, or they're college players who want to play professionally, or they're professional athletes who are struggling with performance anxiety or something like that. I also started really growing in treatment disorders. In anxiety disorders. So I really put an emphasis and a focus on panic disorders in my practice. So I see addicts, I see people with anxiety disorders, I see couples, I see a lot of athletes of varying degrees. And over the course of time, I'm going really fast because it's a long story. Over the course of some time, when I would work with clients individually, especially men, I'd say my practice is about 80% men. When we're done with our work together, I didn't have anywhere to send them. So I started trying to brainstorm, how am I going to keep these guys encouraged after they've finished with working with me? So I developed 2 different programs outside of my practice under the umbrella of Primal. And we could talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. So are you from Nashville?
Nope. From Puerto Rico.
How did you end up in Nashville?
So 2 of my best friends live in Nashville, and my wife and I had always wanted to live in Nashville. So we moved up to Nashville, and I worked at at FitRx, which is very similar to, you ever see The Biggest Loser?
Yeah.
Okay, they've got these binge eating disorder clinics. It was like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's under American Addictions. Do you know American Addictions?
Yeah.
AAC?
AAC,
Yeah.
yep.
So FitRx is now closed, but while I was there, that's where I worked. And that was only a year. We lived up there a year and figured out very quickly, if you're not a musician, if you don't wear skinny jeans and you don't have full sleeves and a large beard, you're the odd man out. So we ended up missing the beach and came back.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. So when you were working in treatment as a primary therapist, what were some of the, I guess, common denominators that you saw amongst young adults when it came to their addictions? Like, what was it, from your perspective, what was it rooted in? And then, like, what were some of the things that you would help them with in the therapeutic side of things?
Common denominators. Well, as you know as well as I do, I mean, you've got different ages and different demographics coming through these doors. But I found success with men specifically, whether it's in addiction or in general life. Men need to feel challenged. Men need to have a sense of mission, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. And a lot of the clients that were coming in didn't have that. They were out of touch with, like, what's the purpose of life and where am I headed? Who am I? Where am I going? What's my mission? And so that became a huge emphasis for me, is trying to get these guys in alignment with why they are alive today in this generation. And in my opinion, when men are in touch with their purpose and their identity, they tend to do a lot better. They tend to, this is just personal perspective, but in staring at your failures and in staring at all the things that haven't gone right for you, you're missing out on everything that's ahead of you. And so for me, it became about, okay, we could talk about all your failures. Let's try to nail down what it is. What are your talents? What are your gift sets? What is it you have a natural knack for? What really scares you? Let's go for that. And that really, I'd say, informed a lot of, and still does, informs a lot of the way that I approach taking men from let's say mediocrity to elite.
Kind of like motivational interviewing in a way for part of it, and then also looking at fears.
A lot of that logotherapy, heavy emphasis on meaning, right?
Would you say
Logotherapy.
I don't know what
Viktor
that
Frankel.
Is. Okay.
Man's Search for Meaning. He popularized that modality. The heavy emphasis is, whereas let's say Nietzsche, I don't want to screw this up. I think it was Nietzsche said, man's greatest desire is the pursuit of pleasure. Right? Freud said something similar. Viktor Frankl said, well, actually what man needs the most, he needs a purpose, he needs a meaning. If he has a meaning, he can endure any suffering. If you give a man a purpose, he will gladly crawl over broken glass with a smile on his face to achieve that end, right? If he knows there's gold in the cave, he'll gladly slay the dragon. Even if it's scary, he'll go towards the scary stuff. So giving men a vision, giving addicts a vision of what life could be, what their talents actually are, what their skill sets actually are, and that they need to be refined, they need to be cultivated, And in my estimation, I think this used to be more of the norm in previous generations. You had the family system wasn't so broken, right? So you had elders that would call you out, like, hey, son, I see this in you. Both to their sons and daughters. Hey, I see this ability in you. I see you have leadership qualities in you. Right? You're an excellent communicator. Hey, wow, you're really gifted at carpentry, and coaxing that out of them. But now 1 in 4 American homes are without a biological father. Yeah. So people are just trying to figure shit out.
Right.
Well, I'm not gifted at anything. So they settle. They don't have a choice. They have a choice, but generally speaking, if you're out of touch with your purpose, your destiny, your meaning, your why, your vision, you're going to struggle. Right. Especially if you're a man. I'm talking as a man.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that. So much of that correlates to like what we do here, where, for instance, with the exercise stuff we do here with the gym. One of the things that I'll say to some of my younger male clients, for instance, they'll come in out of shape. Maybe they know nothing about working out. And I'll just look at them and be like, dude, you got really good genetics. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, you just need to hone in on them. And then they think they have this advantage. So so then it drives them towards, like, I like everything you're saying there. And it's funny in the way you were talking about those quotes earlier, like, and you relate it to addiction, where I do believe people in active addiction, for the most part, a lot of times are ultimately seeking pleasure, and people that recover are people that have found purpose. And there's a huge correlation there. So I do believe it goes from one to the other. If that makes sense. Pleasure and happiness are not the same thing.
Absolutely. I will say this, guys, too. Seneca was a Stoic philosopher. This has really impacted my life. He said, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he's not permitted to prove himself. Men aren't born, they're built. And the way we build them, they have to be chiseled through adversities, through trial, right? Through obstacles. And so putting challenges in front of men. You put a group of ladies together, and they'll sit in a circle and they can talk for hours. Men tend to do better when they're side by side, overcoming an obstacle. They're summiting a mountain, metaphorically, right? So that's really informed my life personally, but how I work with men is, okay, what are the challenges in your life and how do we navigate those? Because we must. Because men who aren't challenged are miserable. And it's the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of hard stuff that really screws us.
Yeah.
I want all the helicopter moms to hear this episode.
Right.
And we talk about this all the time. Like, you rob the opportunity of your son or daughter or whatever to achieve and overcome these obstacles on their own. When you just do it for them, there's no purpose.
Right.
But you give them the opportunity to overcome an obstacle on their own. They say, wow, I did that on my own. And then they go for the next one. Right. So many times we'll see the helicopter mom completely rob them of that opportunity over and over. We talk about it all the time. But the way that you're breaking it down, the psychology behind it, is very well spoken, just to be straightforward.
I appreciate
palatable.
That.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a simple reality. Well, I know your audience is families. It's maybe
it's everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
You know, men have a deep-seated question that they need to have answered. That question is, do I have what it takes?
Right.
And most men, you can't know the answer to that question unless you're willing to take the hard path. And then you will learn through experience, I do have what it takes. Look what I pushed through. Men also have a deep need to be validated by other men. And a lot of men seek that validation in women. But femininity can't bestow masculinity. Only masculine men can bestow masculinity. I'm not a female. I realize it's 2024 and this is hotly debated.
You can be if you want.
Just because I have facial hair doesn't mean. Yeah. Right? Okay, so I can't bestow femininity to my 4 daughters. It's not in me. I can't do it. My wife can, right? And so part of our, even in our age bracket, part of our role is to validate the men around us, to see in them what they're capable of, sometimes before they see it. That's what a lot of this work is here. It's, hey, we see this in you, man. I know you can't see it right now. I'm going to call you higher. I'm going to hold you to a standard. And men thrive in that when they're held to standards, right? In my life, being held to a standard has helped me grow tremendously, especially when it's men that I respect calling me higher. Right. So, yeah.
Give me an example of that when you say like being held to a standard and like somebody that you look up to holding you to a standard. What's an example of that you've seen in your life?
Well, I've been blessed, man. My father is still alive and he's a great dad and we've always had a tight relationship. So he's been my mentor from day one. And he's always been there to encourage me when I was struggling, but also to call me higher. I mean, it even started, I remember, I tell people this story all the time. When I was 17, about to turn 18, my dad pulled me aside in the hallway and he said, son, you know I love you. And I said, okay, what's up, Dad? He said, well, when you turn 18, you're going to either pay me rent or you got to move out. I love you, but it's time to step over the threshold and move into manhood. And that means standing on your own 2 feet. And at that time I wanted to move out anyways. And I already had plans to go play college ball. And so I was already wanting to fly. So it wasn't an insult, but we do men a disservice when we don't push them out of the nest, so to speak.
I have to go here, dude. I know you're maybe thinking the same thing. We literally, and this is not an exaggeration, have had, maybe do have now, 40, 45-year-old men who their discharge plan, according to their mother, is that if they finish treatment, they can come back home.
Right.
40, 45 years old.
Right.
Like, drives me crazy.
Right.
What happens, because, and I'll speak to parents on this. I'm like, what we're trying to do here is prepare your kid for the day that you're not here.
Right, exactly.
Because it's selfish and self-centered to, if a parent's purpose is taking care of their loved one,
right,
you have not prepared them for the day that you're not there to do all these things for them. And it might feel good while you're here on this earth, but I'll just call it what it is. The day that you pass away, you've screwed them. And like, I love this angle that you're taking on this stuff because it's,
yeah. As I'm gonna clear up the mess you just made. It's not a mess, but I know who you're talking about, and this person's going to listen to
Oh,
this.
I'm talking to multiple people.
Okay, yeah. All right,
No,
okay.
oh, not one.
Generationally, it's an American issue too. You know.
Well, but I do want to stay on this because
Okay.
you're right.
Yeah.
And here's what I'll say to that. And chances are, and there's a few moms that are going to listen to this and think to themselves, "Oh my gosh, I've gone about this the whole completely wrong way."
Dads do it too. Let me throw
Dads
that out
do
there.
it too.
Dads do it too. I don't want to harp in on.
The cool thing though is, and I tell this to anybody, you say whatever the hell you got to say to them to get them into treatment.
Yes.
And then the idea is once they are in treatment, perspectives start to switch, you know? And we're seeing that happen with one in particular case who verbatim said, "I will only go to treatment if I can come back home." And puts mom in a position to think, well, I don't know what to do.
Right.
You know, he may not go into treatment. I'm just going to say whatever I got to say. And I had him on the phone. I'm like, whatever. Yes, you can go back home after you complete treatment.
Yeah.
That same exact person yesterday, I talked to him and he was like, "I think I want to stay in Florida for the foreseeable future."
I'm glad you clarified that because, like, as an interventionist, there are methods and strategies that we use at the appropriate times.
Right.
Thank you for.
This was one of those situations because believe me, I'm in the camp of, look, like you're above 18. I'm not even going to talk at 40, 45. If you're above 18, you're an adult at that point. Obviously, what your dad did for you, like, if you don't want to go to treatment, you don't want to go to treatment, but you sure as hell ain't going to stay here, you know? And it's easy for us to say as three men who, you know, have been through this and stuff, but man, I tell you, a mom with her son, you know, it hits different. It really does. And, you know, I always wonder, you know, Levi, who's going to be 8, unbelievable, but like, how will I and how will my wife handle these situations if we're ever faced with them in terms of, you know, adversities like addiction or alcoholism and stuff like that? And it's a scary thing to think about, I'll be honest, because it's easy for me to bark orders from behind a microphone, you know, but man, when it hits home, I don't know. You know, it's going to be a different.
Oh no! When you're emotionally involved, the situation is absolutely different. I bring this up all the time. You know, heaven forbid one of my kids ends up struggling with addiction. I've told myself time and time again, even with all of my knowledge in this field, I better go to somebody else to seek guidance and seek direction.
Well, the good thing is we'll be able to get scholarships, so we won't have to shell out, you know, too much money. Okay, so do you have anything else?
I have a question, and this is
we're not done. I was just going to pivot.
You're good.
Out of curiosity, you mentioned earlier you have 4 daughters.
Oh yeah,
and like the space that you moved into with the mindset that you have. When you mentioned it prior to us recording, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if because he has 4 daughters, like, was part of your personal journey like, I have to be a protector, so to speak, and like become a man? Because there's a saying that I've heard before: I don't want to be a collector, I want to be a protector. And to be straightforward, it's talking about firearms. But like, there's people but then there's that mindset where like, kind of like becoming a knight, if you will. Like, it's your job to, and I just feel like, for me, I have 2 sons, and I've heard like having a daughter will totally change a man. And their perspective of like, it's my job to protect, and how do I be that man? Yeah. I'm just curious, was that like part of your journey, or what? Do you have insight on that?
Yeah, that's totally related. You don't know how you're going to change when you get married, and you don't know how you're going to change when you have kids, but it does change you. I always tell people, information informs, experience transforms.
Say that one more time.
Information informs, experience transforms. Right? People are going through an experience here at Rock Recovery, right? It's not just information. It's experience. They're touching it. They're living it. But as far as four daughters, that protector side of me really started to wake up when I started to understand I'm responsible for more than just myself. Other people are leaning on me. Other people need me. And I knew that ethereally. I knew that in theory. But when I started having my own kids, that really woke up something inside of me. I also started thinking towards the future, like, who are these 4 girls going to marry? And are there going to be are there going to be any men worthy of that? And what am I doing about it to encourage men, to build men, just societally? Like, what am I doing for this country? And so, yeah, that's all in the mix.
And I mean, I'm sure, because how old are your daughters?
Oldest is 13, youngest is 9.
They are, because you oftentimes hear you marry your mom or you marry your dad. In this situation, I would want them to marry their dad, you know, in the sense of who you are, who you represent, what what you do, how you carry yourself, stuff like that. So it is kind of a byproduct of, because, some people could listen to this episode and think, well, he doesn't have any sons, so maybe he's pouring into all these men because he doesn't have any sons, which I think is probably a valid point, and I mean...
It's a good point, except my wife and I fostered 13 teenage boys.
Oh, shit. Never mind.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dang, dude.
So we've been around the block.
You got a story, man. This is awesome.
But what I'm getting with that is that, like, having your daughters is and representing that person, like how you are and how you represent other men and how you raise them up, even those 13 boys, your daughters see that,
right?
And that's something that they are looking at, and it's ingrained in them as like, this is who the type of man that I need to be looking for.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Which is a challenge. Am I the kind of man I would want my daughters to marry?
Right.
And you have to assess yourself frequently. Am I the kind of man I would want my kids to marry? And it's a gut check sometimes. Am I acting like that guy? Am I acting like the ideal? So it's a good source of accountability.
Of that right now, because
I kind of, in a roundabout way, we talk about rehab romances once in a while. And something that I'll say to the men, they're like, oh, we're interested. They'll tell me they're interested in each other, this, that. And I just look at them, these guys, and I'm like, their father did not send their daughter to treatment to end up with a boy, not a man, the likes of you right now. Maybe you go through this process, find a purpose, become a man. That's a different story, But think of the selfishness and self-centeredness, and that's why I think I love that we're talking about this. I'll keep saying it over and over. But essentially, people come to treatment thinking they're coming to quit drugs and alcohol. The reality of the situation is it has very little to do with stopping drugs and alcohol. Detox does that for you. Like our levels of care, PHP, IOP, we turn boys into men and girls into women, respectable folks in society, that.
When it comes to the substance abuse side of things, and when you were working in the industry, and this was the approach that you had, or part of the approach that you had, do you feel like that you saw a lot of success in that, in contrary to like your typical, CBT or DBT or what, or and I'm not a therapist, nor do I even know a lot about it. I know just enough to get by and to carry a conversation. But like you do hear a lot of like, oh, I do CBT and DBT and EMDR and, all these sorts of things. And I like your approach of, okay, yeah, we're going to find your purpose. We're going to help you amplify your life through purpose, through meaning, through accomplishments. We may look at the past, it's like what the big book says. We will not, how's that go, Ben? We won't regret the past, nor will we shut the door on it. Like it's there, it's happened.
Respect it.
Yeah. But we want to look forward.
Right.
How do you think your success was in that in comparison to like a typical, just therapist that's like, oh, we're going to focus on everything in the past. And because, and I'll say this and then you can answer. A lot of times, and when we talk to parents, and I know Ben says the same thing, I do share with the parents like, hey, there's a couple different components to this when it comes to your son or daughter getting clean. One of those components is drugs and alcohol is a symptom. It's a symptom of something that has taken place in the past. If that's some sort of traumatic event, sense of abandonment, whatever the case is, those sorts of things are there, and we need to take a look at those things. And we need to peel layers of the onion back, figure out what's at the core of it, do with that, and then move forward from there. So part of our spiel is we got to look at that stuff, you know, and we got to focus on that stuff at least for a period of time, especially if you have, you know, women that have undergone, you know, severe sexual trauma. And now I know we're talking a lot about men, but you've obviously worked with both populations.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually used to work at an all-female treatment center as well. Desert Rose started like that. Actually.
Yeah.
So I would say, as pertaining to treating clients and things like that, you know, one of the things I always refer back to is Viktor Franco. He was a Holocaust survivor who wrote Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
He was also a psychiatrist. He said one of the main goals for therapy is to not put your client in homeostasis, which would be like harmony and balance, but to introduce tension. He said, you know, because in tension, that's when we grow. He said, your goal in therapy is to kind of be a little bit of an irritant, right? I'm going to push back at you. I'm going to challenge you. Right. I'm going to build rapport with you. I'm going to empathize with you, right? And so all these different modalities, there's ways to do that with all these different modalities. CBT really focuses on your cognitions and how do your thoughts affect your behaviors, and are any of those thoughts dysfunctional, and are those behaviors dysfunctional, right? And can we adapt? DBT really heavily focuses on skills. Let's help you cultivate skills that you never learned. Communication skills, things like that. Conflict resolution skills, right? I'm also EMDR certified. That's not necessarily something that's usually something I refer out for, but
we have a heavy emphasis on that. All of our therapists are EMDR certified.
That's fantastic. So, you know, you guys are targeting deep-seated traumas and at a nervous system level. That's fantastic. So, you know, there's no cookie cutter approach, but suffice to say, I think sometimes in the treatment industry and sometimes even in the schooling, we teach our therapists, it's all about empathy. It's all about rapport, but we don't teach our therapists how to be the irritant. We don't teach our staff not to be annoying, but honestly, if I'm an irritant, that sometimes comes off as annoying, but if it's for a proper end, if it's for the best, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to say the hard shit, even if you don't like it, right? You guys know that. You've been in the space long enough to know sometimes you got to shoot people straight for the most part, all the time, really. So yeah, I'm not somebody that really clings to a technical modality per se. I use all of them. I'm also real, man. The way I'm talking to you guys is the way I'm going to deal with my kids.
Yeah.
You know?
Ben, you're like,
this is exciting
I know,
for me. I'm
know.
loving doing this episode, this conversation right now, because to be straightforward, I'm not learning any new principles. Everything that you're saying is something that I know, but what I am learning right now is new ways to communicate it.
That's good.
I like the irritant thing.
That's because
We could have used that last night.
Well, that's what we talk about all the time, and that's the direction I was going. Is now I'm like, you're helping me understand what I already know better.
Yeah. Good.
I don't know. I'm not saying I know it better. I'm saying you're helping me get to know it better.
Right. Yeah.
So like I tell the parents all the time, like a client will call their mom and, such and such is not going right. I don't like the food here. And this, that, the other. And I'm like, and mom wants to like fix it, or dad, whatever. Right. And I'm like, perfect. Something has irritated them. We are going to use that. I use the line all the time. We don't want our clients getting straight A's in treatment. If they breeze through treatment, and you use the word homeostasis, I love that. I refer to it as rainbows and Red Bull. Right. You know, you're going through treatment, it's a breeze, something's wrong.
Right.
In my opinion, if there is no irritant, I don't believe good work is being done.
Yeah, it's okay if it gets messy.
I feel like it has to get messy. Because I want to see our clients react negatively.
Yeah.
You know, I want to see them get angry. I want to see what it looks like when they're depressed. I want to see what it looks like when they have anxiety. Because if they come here and we don't see any of that, but that's what got them here, when they leave here and they experience it, then what?
Right.
You know, I want them to go through that stuff here while we're here to guide them through it. I love the way that you explained it. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Well, that's why, like what your dad did with you, he gave you enough enough of a warning, like, hey, when you're going to be 18, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
So let's work out the kinks now.
Yep.
You know, and that's kind of what we do with our clients is like Ben's saying, when this stuff happens, it's good. Let's embrace it. Let's work through it together. Because sure as hell, it's going to happen when we're not here. And when it does, how are you going to react? How are you going to respond?
Can I say something to the moms who are listening?
Yes.
So I've never been a mom, but I would say the natural state for mothers in general, they're nurturers. I mean, your literal offspring feeds from your body, your very body. It's what you're designed for. So the natural inclination for a nurturer is to keep their offspring very safe.
Yeah.
And fathers by nature are the challengers. They're like, yeah, you could jump out of the tree. You could do it. You know, hey, you could jump into the deep end of the pool. Come on, let's do it together. You know, they're going to push the envelope a little bit. So that dynamic is purposeful, but recognize as a mother, sometimes in your desire to keep your baby safe, whether it's a boy or a girl, your natural tendency is to cling too tightly, right? The hard work for parents is the release, is the letting go, trusting the process. And it's scary. It's scary to trust your kids to rock recovery, whether that kid's 40 years old or not, right?
Yeah.
But recognizing yourself, that's okay. That's that nurture inside of you. But at some point, there's a really cool instance. I think it's the bald eagle, actually. The way the bald eagles get their offspring to leave the nest, they start removing the soft structures in the nest. They start removing the feathers and the moss. All you have left are thorny little branches that make the baby eaglets uncomfortable. And they voluntarily leave the nest because the environment itself got uncomfortable. But it's for their good. That's how they fly, right? So that's kind of the idea, is be okay with the removal of comfort so that your kid can thrive and flourish in life.
You know, it's funny you say that. And I think it's worth saying too, that even for dads, and I'm going to speak on behalf of myself, I try not to, but I approach my son differently than I do my daughters. With my son, I'm more of a, let's jump in the deep end of the pool. Go ahead, jump out. You can climb up to the top of the tree, but you're going to get out on your own. So if you get stuck, you're going to be stuck there for a while, which has happened.
Still there today.
Yeah. But with my daughters, it's the complete opposite. You know, like, Hattie, please don't go up in the tree. Hattie, please don't. Hattie, just because your brother is doing it doesn't mean that you should be doing it. You know, those sorts of things. And it's a challenge for me.
It is, yeah.
You know, like if they fall, scrape up their knee. Last week, my daughter, Hattie, she just figured out how to ride her bike without training wheels, like maybe a month ago. And we live on a dirt road in the acreage. And she was pedaling super fast, right? And she was chasing Levi. And he's quick. He was running on his feet, and she couldn't keep up with him. But the front wheel, caught the dirt, and then she boom, tumbled down the. Oh my God! I was like, my heart just sunk.
That happens.
And luckily she had a helmet on, but she busted her face off the dirt road, and her chin was all busted up, and her knee and stuff. And it was like, I never ran so fast in my life. Now, my son does that, which he has. I'm leisurely walking up, looking at him, picking him up by his arms. You okay, buddy? Yeah. And, tap him on the butt. You'll be good.
Right.
And I don't know that it's wrong. I don't know that it's right, but I know that it's something that needs to be improved upon. I don't want my daughters thinking that oh, dad's just going to do everything for me.
Right.
Because that's kind of what they think right now, So anyways.
It's so funny. I kind of condescendingly got yelled at by a mom on the playground the other day. Kai is quite the climber, as Levi is too. I saw that picture of him climbing the fence the other day on your Instagram. But Kai's at the top of the this workout contraption that they have at the park, way at the top, and this mom looks over, your kid's gonna fall. And I just look at her, I'm like, I know, he's okay. He's a good climber. And I just sat there like, because my mindset is literally like, you know, if he falls, he'll probably be hurt, but he will be okay.
Right.
But like, I'm the kind of like, let him live and learn situation where that mom, I could tell, like if she almost had lasers coming out of her eyes, like she wanted to cut me in half, you know?
Right.
Like, it's just, I think it is a different mindset in a way.
Yep.
I want to pivot and talk now about what you're doing with Primal.
Okay.
And, dig into that a little bit, and then we'll wrap things up.
I'm game.
I'd like to take a minute after, too, if we could, and get some of his insight on, like, his adventure experiential therapy stuff that he does.
Well, let's do that now, and then we'll kick into Primal.
I was more curious, and I'll be honest, I'm being a little selfish here. Tom and I, we run the adventure experiential days on Tuesdays and Thursdays here at Rock, and I know that you have a ton of experience with it.
Yeah.
And you've been doing it longer than probably both of us, easily, very easily.
Yeah.
Can you give just whatever insight on the benefits of the VAT? You know, any principles that you apply to it, stuff along those lines?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I used to do, and it's morphed a bit. I mean, what I do now is a little bit different, but, you know, for me, it was about, remember I said earlier, information informs, experience transforms. I wanted to give clients an experience that left a mark. There's this word in Hebrew, it's called kabod. It means substance and weight. Like a boulder hits the ground, it leaves an indentation on the ground. I wanted them to have an experience that left an indentation. So that often involved the water. You know, we're in Palm Beach County, so free diving with manatees, with sea turtles, learning how to breath hold properly so that you could see the octopus or the different fish, right? And there was often a lot of breath training involved. So I'm teaching them how to take control of the nervous system through the breath. And for a lot of people, water is a real issue. It triggers a lot of fear and anxiety, you know?
Me.
You,
Yeah,
so,
big time.
I mean, it's a common thing. So this allowed clients to really have face fear, or at least face worry and anxiety. I mean, if you've never paddleboarded next to a 1,500-pound manatee, you feel like you're paddling next to a great white shark. They're huge. And then in the water with them, it's very, to your nervous system, it's instant fight or flight. So helping people navigate that stuff was a big part of it. So mine was fully focused on water. Now it's more focused on teaching of hard skills. We teach basic, how do you start fire from scratch without matches? How do you build shelter in the forest if you've got nothing and the sun's gone down and you're lost? How do you navigate topography in the forest? You know, so
navigate what?
Navigate, like navigation.
Oh, I thought you said topography or something.
Topography, yeah.
What is that?
Just navigating different elevations and different types of forest or desert or whatever. So we mix that up, and now it's really just about mental fortitude, teaching people how to remain composed, how to maintain mental toughness when shit hits the fan, because it's gonna hit the fan. How are you gonna handle it? And putting people in situations purposefully that allow them to be refined, so that they know that they can handle future adversity, right? And you can teach that verbally. And that's one level of learning, but we have to do it experientially to get it in the bones, right? So that's how the early adventure therapy work kind of morphed into some of the stuff that I'm doing now. It even applies to hand-to-hand combat. Most people think, or I'll say most men think, they'll be formidable in a fight. But when you go to a jiu-jitsu academy and you got a guy that's your weight or under, who's on top of you, who's trained, and you can't get out and you can't even breathe, you feel like a helpless infant, you realize how the chasm that exists between people that are prepared and trained and people who aren't. So that's what I'm trying to close the gap in a sense.
I'm starting to like connect the dots with that quote you had about the experience, right? The inform versus experience. Because there have been so many situations in my life where I would like to think that I would react or respond in a certain way, but you don't really know until you experience it.
Right.
And voluntarily putting yourself in situations such as you're talking about with the experiential, the adventure therapies, it gives you an opportunity to get a taste of what you might really do.
Exactly.
And yeah, I'm like connecting all these dots now. And because I've always talked about the adventure experiential therapy, one of my big ones is, you mentioned rapport earlier.
Yeah.
Where it gives me the opportunity, I feel like, just to be a real human being with another client.
100%.
But you've come from a different angle. I think naturally this stuff happened. But again, I think for me right now, it's bringing awareness, like, oh, I'm connecting these dots. That does happen. I didn't really put much thought to it, but it is part of the process. And you've helped me, like, I don't know, what's the word?
Piece the
Solidify
puzzle
it.
together.
Yeah.
I would say too, to add to that, we say adventure therapy. To me, adventure isn't peripheral to life. It is massively important. If you're not consistently engaging adventure, you don't feel alive. You feel you're in a monotonous routine that's stale. You're bored. A lot of people use just simply because they're bored. They don't have something to shoot for, right? So I'll pick up again. It's adventure is necessary, I think, to all of us to have a sense of aliveness. And so, I it's the way I live my life. I consistently schedule things and do things that give me a thrill, that give me a sense of excitement, that give me a sense of challenge, right? Even if I've got to pay for it. And so adventure therapy reintroduces the client to this idea that they don't need a synthetic thrill. There's real thrills that exist on the planet. You just have to hunt them down. You have to go seek them out. And there is a real dopamine release. There is a real hormonal shift that happens. I do feel better when I move the body. Some of this stuff's so practical, but generally speaking, the mindset, trying to retrain and understand you need adventure in your life.
You need adventure in your life. That's going to segue. I think I have a good question here coming.
All right.
So I get asked by, or I guess it's more of a statement. Like parents will say to me on the phone, like, oh, I hope when my son gets there, he really participates in all the experiential adventure, the gym stuff you do. Right now, he does nothing. And I'll call it what it is. I wish this wasn't the case, but we do get the client here every now and again where I personally just can't motivate them to do anything. You go to a venture group and do, for instance, I do surf group that also includes yoga on the beach. It's like
perfect.
And meditation. It's all three. And I can't get them to participate in any of those. Like I've got something for everybody. The people that are more advanced in the water, the surfing, the people that can do yoga, most clients can do that. Any of them can meditate, but from your perspective, I'm sure you've had groups where you've had clients that you got the one or the couple that just won't participate. What is there any approach that you take,
or plain out just give up mid paddle, and they're just done. You got to tow them in. I've had that plenty of times.
I've had that too.
Yeah. So, man, part of it has to do with rapport and just like, hey man, so what's going on with you right now? Like I can see you're pretty resistant, or I see you're upset. So I don't know if there's a formula to it, but I think sometimes, if you're a person who's never even spent much time outdoors and you're going through a nature hike, even if they make it a quarter mile out of the mile, it's still a win. So I think sometimes just having them out on the beach and the fresh air and the sunlight, and they're seeing everybody else have a good time or whatever, that's still that can be a win. And resistance it's like a melting ice cube, right? So some people are going to be thicker, colder, harder than others, and we got to trust the process that what you're doing here isn't a waste of time. You're not grasping at the wind. Like they're in this environment, and this environment is powerful, right? Just like if you, it's like this is a negative way of looking at it, but I always tell people, if you stand in a sewage long enough, you forget it stinks, right? You get the smell on you. You get used to the smell. But if the opposite is true, if you're in a positive, life-giving, transformational environment, whether you like it or not, you're breathing it. It's getting on you, right? Just like courage is contagious, right? Life is contagious. Honor is contagious. Truth is contagious. And so, yeah, even in those environments where it's hard as the facilitator to not get frustrated. You're like, man, could you just embrace this? Could you just like try it and find out what I know? And yet having the grace and the presence of mind and the patience to go, you know what? Them just being in the environment is a W. And so let's just trust the process.
I think even having that approach, because I know what you're talking about. It happens all the time. You get the people that just want to sit at the picnic table and not do anything. I even tell them sometimes, look, we're going to do this. It's up to you. I'm not going to force you to do it, you know? And then after a while, you know, sometimes, listen, and I'm a firm believer is you can't fix lazy, you know? Like it's just lazy. People are going to be lazy and they don't, you know, they're so closed-minded and stuff like that. And also, you know, I try and think too, like we can't fix everybody. I'm not going to spread myself too thin. I'm going to put efforts towards the people that are willing to do the stuff. And, you know, if you've come out here now a half dozen times and you're still not willing to participate, it's not for lack of effort on my behalf, you know?
Yeah, one of the approaches that I take, so when I do the workouts here, Tuesday nights in particular, I do them a little bit different, where normally I'll take like the people that want to work out, you just come out. And if you don't want to, you stay in the group and you're going to do process group with one of our facilitators. On Tuesday nights, though, one of the things I do, I offer like a third option. You can either come work out, you could stay in process group, or you could come cheerlead the people that are working out. That doesn't mean like come out there, smoke cigarettes, hit your vape and be on your cell phone.
Yeah.
That means, and my hope is, and I explain this to them, that for those that maybe have never done it before, they're nervous, or maybe they just don't have the energy today, that they're unsure of themselves, that they'll at least come out and see what we're doing.
Yeah.
And about half the time they say they're coming out to cheerlead, and we'll be a couple movements in, and all of a sudden they'll pick something up and like join in.
Right.
Or they'll come back and do it next time. They say, oh, that didn't look as scary as it sounded to me. Because a lot of people come here, they have no experience with the gym and that intimidation factor. But just giving them the opportunity. I like that you brought up just the environment. Again, I'm connecting dots. I'm like, all right, I do that. Now you're just helping me put it together where, like the other day, the surf group thing, I was literally telling myself, like, hey, man, they got to come down to the beach. How many people get to enjoy the Palm Beach?
Exactly.
Right? You know, so.
We live in a vacation zone. I think sometimes, guys, we got to be reminded, and this takes conscious effort. If I light myself on fire, meaning I'm full of piss and vinegar, I'm full of faith, I'm full of fire, I'm full of audacity, I'm full of hope, I'm full of courage and honor, all that stuff. It's like a fire. It's like a campfire. If you're near the campfire, you're gonna get smoke on you. You're gonna catch the heat. So our job is to stay on fire. Our job is to keep building ourselves as men, as spiritual beings, as fathers, as husbands, as citizens, and that will get on people. But sometimes in life it feels like the negative is stronger than the positive, and I would just say it's the opposite. If you put an ice cube, a cold, hard ice cube, a block of ice near a fire, which one goes away, right? So, yeah, I think light's always stronger than darkness.
Yeah. So going on to transitioning to Primal, you started this when?
Well, I've been doing this kind of thing for 20 plus years, but I officially started Primal a little over 2 years ago, maybe more, maybe 3. Yeah.
And so give us kind of the outline of it and what it is.
Okay. So Primal at its core is focused on building formidable men in a soft and confused era. In my estimation, men in general at this time in history have grown soft and domesticated. So we're trying to reverse that. We really put a heavy emphasis on virtues like courage and honor and hard work and taking responsibilities and duties very seriously. We place a heavy emphasis on remaining primal, getting back in touch with that part of you that just didn't give a rip about what other people thought about you. That part of you that was a little kid, could run around naked. You weren't so self-conscious. That part of you that's a nonconformist. That part of you that refuses to be tamed and civilized and will not conform to popular narratives just because they're popular. Okay. We also really focus on training, trying to develop in men hard skills. So hand-to-hand combat, teaching men how to defend themselves so they can defend themselves and defend other people if necessary. We do that through Krav Maga, through Jiu-Jitsu, and hopefully in the near future, weaponry. We also focus on fitness. So we've got personal trainers in the mix. We do a lot of paramilitary style training, getting guys fit and ready in the outdoors. We focus heavily on spiritual identity. If there is a God, what is that? Can you contact God, and does that God inform your destiny, your purpose, your mission? Lastly, I'll say this: the whole point is to just build men so to the degree that they can live a meaningful, purpose-filled life and die well. Not just live, but die well. Everybody we all want to die well. I don't want to die like a coward. I don't want to die with, my family's gone to shit and I wasn't a faithful man and, I imploded at the end. I always tell people it's important how you start the race. It's more important how you finish the race. It's more important. So we've all got a story, right? It's like that old saying, what is it? Every sinner's got a past, every saint's got a future, something like that. I probably butchered it, but yeah, man. I want to see a resurrection of formidable men in this country. And I think it's possible. And I'm actually a bit of an optimist. I mean, I don't know if you guys knew this, but something like 6% of Americans fought against the British in the Revolutionary War and overcame the greatest military power at that time. The 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, fought against the Persians and started a movement and actually ended up dying in the battle, but their countrymen came up behind them and won the victory. So I don't think you need the masses. I think you need some quality, committed, locked in men who can make a major dent. And that's what I'm after.
Yeah.
There's a quote that I love. It's and it kind of encapsulates everything that we've been talking about, but it's strong men make good times make weak men make hard times.
Right.
And then that circle just continues. And I feel like right now as society, like you were saying when you opened up with this portion, like things could not be easier right now. Mm-hmm. With DoorDash and Uber Eats, like people don't even have to go to the grocery store.
Right.
And it has created a society, in my opinion, that's probably lazier, at least in my lifetime. Right. Lazier than ever, and et cetera. But I love all that stuff.
So what's it consist of in terms of, I know you have a different programming and stuff.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of different training options now, but the two I'm most excited about, the two entry portals to Primal are, one is a 3-day mountain intensive in North Carolina. That's a heavy emphasis on first response, trauma, first aid training, basic survival skills training. We also go heavy into confidence training and mental toughness. It all takes place in a beautiful mountain range. We stay in a lodge together, eat good food, all that stuff. But it's heavy focused training. It's like 3 days. It's like 5 days packed into 3 days. So that's one option. If you go through that, you're in the Primal Brotherhood. The other option is the rite of passage process, which is a group format that's 8 weeks long. And the idea there is most men have not been taken through a formal rite of passage process. For all of human history, men, it was understood by society, men weren't born, they're built. They have to go through a process to become forged, like a sword goes through a process to be sharpened. So every society has their or has had their version. We're the new kids on the block in America. We don't even know what that means. We never really had that, and there's different reasons for that. But I'll give you an example. So in ancient Sparta, they had something called the crypteia, and the crypteia at the age of 7, it's a beautiful experience. It's dramatic, but at the age of 7, the older Spartan men would come to your house and take the boy out of his mother's arms, symbolically removing him from his mother and saying, he's with the men now. He would go live in a dorm in the neighborhood with other boys his age. And they would train them in ethics, in rhetoric, in hand-to-hand combat, in wrestling, and philosophy, in the Spartan ways, right? And every year it just got more progressive. Now they're using real swords. And at the age of 17, 18, they have to go do something called, I gave you the wrong word. The whole process is called the agoge, but when at the age of 17, 18, they go to something called the crypteia. And for an entire year, at the age of 17, you get kicked out of the village. You have to just go survive based on all the skills you've learned from age 7 to 17. You've learned how to feed yourself. You've learned how to hunt. You've learned how to defend yourself. You learn how to build shelter. You learn how to be ruthless and deceptive, how to hide from the enemy, all that stuff. If you can survive the year, feed yourself, build your own shelter, build your own fire, come back at the end of the year, you're welcome back into the Spartan community, and then you're qualified to then go be a warrior on behalf of the Spartan country of Sparta. And you do that for 10 years, and within that range, at the end of that range, if you survive, you're now able to become a quote unquote citizen of Sparta, and you can take a wife and start a family.
Wow.
Because you've earned it.
It's almost like that pot of gold you were talking. What'd you say? If there's a dragon,
if there's gold in the cave, you're willing to take on the dragon to get the gold. The idea was they understood you're not a man just because you have testicles and chest hair. Just because you have a penis doesn't make you a man. That being a man means something, and you've been through a process. You've been forged, and you know it. It's not so everybody else knows it, it's so that you know it in your bones. No, I earned this shit. This is me, right? So that's a ridiculous. That was real, but I'm not doing that to that degree. But our rite of passage is the idea that we want to train you in courage. We want to train you in honor. We do that through teaching. We do that through training. I want to teach you how to be formidable. I want to teach you how to be a good man who can love his wife and go the distance and be a good father, who can be patient, who can be a lion and a lamb, right? Warrior Poet Society. I want to teach you how to operate with other men in a honorable way, and how to forge quality brotherhood and bonds that can last till the day that you die. And you're going to learn, you're going to walk away with hard skills. And at the end of this thing, so you're doing physical disciplines throughout, you're doing trainings throughout the 8 weeks. It's virtual. Most of it's virtual. At the end of the 8 weeks, we culminate in a 24-hour nonstop training event I call the Crucible. And that involves serious mental toughness training, no sleep, minimal food, a lot of physicality, a lot of competition. You're competing against your brothers. And at the end of this thing, everybody's extremely tight. And now you're part of the brotherhood. And now you're welcome back to be a cadre or a junior instructor to help future groups go through the process themselves. And that way we have a cycle of mentorship, kind of like sponsorship, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's the quick and dirty version. Once you come in those two portals, the Rite of Passage or Primal course, you have access to the 2.0 version, which is in Puerto Rico. That's a 5-day event. I also have a Tetons backpacking intensive in Wyoming. That's a 5-day event. This year, I'm launching in June, end of June, a couples trip to Peru. We're hiking the Inca Trail, culminating in Machu Picchu, which is a world wonder. And there's a couple other things down the line, but yeah, we've got a lot pop in, and I'm really stoked to build this thing out.
So it's 8 weeks, and the virtual sessions are how many times a week?
Once a week. The virtuals are hour and a half every Monday, and then we also you're connected with a small squadron of men, and and cadre who are on top of you all week. But it's designed for guys that are busy, that have jobs, that are working, that just don't have hours to waste a day. I mean, I'm a busy guy. I got 4 kids. I do all the disciplines with all the guys every cycle. So I hold myself to the same standard.
Is there an age minimum?
The youngest we've had was 16. The oldest we've had was 57.
I feel like I want to do this with Weston. He's 14.
Yeah. Yeah, we just had a father-son go through it together. That was really impactful.
So is it like a daily, you have certain things you have to accomplish daily? Like
Yes.
as far as workouts and stuff like that?
So you're committing to intermittent fasting for 8 weeks, which is, for me, I stop eating at 8 p.m. and I don't eat again till 12 noon the next day.
Yeah.
So it's just disciplined eating regimens.
Yeah.
You're committing to cold showers every day for the 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. You're committing to daily readings. I issue readings, and then you have to follow that reading up with 10 minutes of silence. You don't talk. You can go for a walk or sit quietly, but you have to absorb what you read. And then you chime in with your squad, the thing that popped for you in the reading. Here's what stuck out to me. So everybody's staying clued in. I have the guys implement a family meeting. So I give them parameters for that, and they do that once a week with their family. So we're really focused on building families. We also have a marriage check-in. So guys that have a significant other, I have them do a little marriage check-in with their spouse. We want to forge quality marriages. And there may be 1 or 2 other disciplines there, but they're not extremely time-consuming. It's really just the cultivation of new habits. Some of the guys come in there to have some of these habits, but most people don't do a marriage check-in. Most people don't do a family meeting. Most people haven't intermittent fasted. Most people aren't doing cold showers. I mean, there's the oddball. If you want it, sometimes we do cold ice baths, cold baths, things like that. But the idea is we're trying to cultivate and normalize habits that last beyond the 8 weeks. You've done this for 8 weeks. At this point, it's solidified. And then we repeat the cycle. Man, a lot of the guys continually come back to be cadre. They're helping the next cycle go through. That affords them the opportunity to mentor other men. We're building bonds. I mean, we're growing. And the idea for me is start regionally, Palm Beach County, Martin County, and then expand beyond that. I mean, I've got guys flying in from California, from Washington State, North Carolina, Jersey, New York, all over the place, man. Chicago, you name it. So it's a really beautiful thing, man.
Have you heard of Ben Greenfield?
Is that a musician?
No. He's I'll give you his info after. He's does a lot of the stuff that you're talking about with his boys. He's got a podcast. He's huge. He's got a massive podcast called the Ben Greenfield Podcast.
Okay.
But he's like a biohacker.
Okay.
Super does a lot of things that I wouldn't do, but he's a biohacker. This is what he does. He, shoves coffee up his rectum and, does coffee enemas and all that weird shit. But he's got 2 boys and he raises them in a way that is pretty fascinating. And I think you'd find it pretty cool. He has like a family. So, cause what made me think of it was the family meetings that you're talking about. His family's regimented to the day, to the hour almost. And he has a family legacy book that he's going to pass this book down to his children and everything that they've done over their years and as a family and stuff. And they all do the cold showers, and he goes out with them, and they do a lot of the workouts outside together and in cold weather. And he's got 2 boys and they're teenagers now, but he's been doing it since they were,
it's their normal now.
that's exactly right. It's their normal. So, well, man, that's awesome. I think that, I'd like to explore options on how we can possibly get our men that are clients here involved.
Let's do it, man.
That. Wouldn't that be cool, Ben?
It's open to
That'd be
anybody.
awesome.
I always tell people, I'm just looking for guys that want it.
Yeah.
And that's not everybody,
Right.
and that's cool. But you got to want it. I don't go hunt guys down. I don't, honestly, I don't market it too broadly. I mean, I'm actually about to place an ad, so I'm going to eat my words. But the idea is, you can't make men hungry. You can just invite. You can just open the doors and, open arms, man. If you want it, come get it,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking in my head too when I asked earlier about like what do you do with the clients that don't want to participate. On the flip end of that, I was thinking about it must be really cool with Primal to have that where men are voluntarily showing up.
Yes.
And we were speaking previously at some classes that I took, and I think a big part of that for me, why it was such a good experience, is everybody wanted to be there.
Right. There's mojo on that, man.
There's a mindset. We're all of the same mindset. Like, I didn't even know these people, and they're from across the nation, but you're in this class together, you think the same,
right.
Have that same, as you're calling it, mojo. I like that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that was fun. It's been an hour and 20 minutes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else, Ben?
I just want to compliment them. I gotta say, I'm really impressed with how do I say it? You're so well rounded in everything. I think a lot of times my perspective, like for instance with Rock, is we like build a team where we bring in people with different strengths. I feel like you're super knowledgeable on like every aspect. You're a licensed mental health counselor. That's years and years of school, and having the insight to trauma and all that. But then also I'm hearing all the life skill stuff. Like as a team here, we do that at Rock, and everybody has their different strengths. Like Tom was saying before, like Tom and I, we can get by. Like we took classes, went to college for addictions. Like we can get by on some of the therapy stuff and hang with the therapist a little bit, but then they are way more knowledgeable than we are in many aspects. But then also we've got like our frontline staff that handles the life skills stuff. And I just feel like you have so much knowledge on all encompassing. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And like,
I got to get this guy to just follow me around every day.
Yeah, no
tell
kidding.
me how great I am.
yeah. Well, I like giving people compliments too, man.
You're good at it.
I do. Cause, and to be straightforward, like case in point, I like being open and authentic too. Like, because I feel like a lot of this podcast episode has been about finding mentors. And I'll speak for myself, like the experience I've just had here. I've been sitting here and I'm saying, man, I've been in this field a long time, over a decade, and I'm thinking to myself, I could learn a lot from this guy, and you're somebody that I know, like I can go to, be around, and gain more knowledge, gain more insight, gain more experience. And I feel like a big part of my recovery process in general, getting me to my 13 years of sobriety, has been constantly morphing from one group of people to the next. I don't do it intentionally, but like I find myself going from one spot to another, like, oh, I've gotten what I can from here.
Yeah.
How do I continue to grow? And it's just become, I don't know, habit almost to constantly be seeking more knowledge, but it's through people for me.
Yeah, I sorry to interrupt you, Ben.
Yeah.
The other day I heard someone use this term, male solution network. Male solution network. And what you're touching on is the way it used to work, men were more connected. This guy knew something about finances, and this guy knew something about marriage, and this guy knew something about addiction, and this guy knew, and we were all connected as a brotherhood, leaning on each other's strengths, receiving counsel, receiving validation, receiving encouragement, and it didn't feel gay. It didn't feel effeminate. Right. It was sharp. It was legit. Where women tend, I'm not a woman, so maybe I'll stay away from that. But men want solutions. How do I get better? How do we fix this freaking problem? Let's roll. Let's do this. Okay. Well, the best modality, the best way, in my estimation, to do that, get a bunch of men who are formidable, and you lean on each other and you sharpen each other. And there's a verse in the Proverbs that says this: as a brother sharpens a brother, iron sharpens iron. Right. And now we live in a lone wolf, lone ranger time where men are isolated. They don't have other men in their lives to inspire them, to challenge them, to hold them to a standard, to hold them to a creed. And we long for that. And, I work with vets periodically, And by the way, I did mention this. I trained at VMI, which is a military academy. So I trained with the Army for 4 years. And so a lot of my brothers are still in service. I've lost a lot of brothers in combat. And so I have great respect and admiration and honor for the men that serve this country. And I talk with a lot of vets, and they say, man, I actually don't necessarily miss combat. I don't miss the bloodshed. What I do miss is the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the mutual mission that we had. And I think we can have that even as citizens. We can have mutual brotherhood. We can have a mission. We just need to get more intentional, more precise with it.
I would agree. I definitely would agree with that. I think that we have isolated ourselves in a way, but I think it's been you're exactly right. It's kind of like a societal type thing. Like if you can't figure it out, most people don't want to ask for help anymore. It's like, if you can't figure it out on your own, don't tell anybody you can't figure it out on your own. Just,
I like what you said about and not be gay part. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but when I like get a new sponsee, for instance, like when I'm done talking to him, whether in person or over the phone, I'll be like, "Love you, man."
Right.
And I could tell like the first couple times I do it, so many of them are like, and they're like, "Bye."
Right.
But then like after I've done it a few times, they'll say it back. And it's like, I love you like a brother, dude. Like, You need something, I'm there for you. And
it's so unfortunate that is abnormal now.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate. But we can right the ship, right? I mean, we just can't underestimate. Just that alone can reorient how somebody sees friendship, brotherhood, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. We got a long way to go. I mean, I'm thinking big picture, like even as far as this country goes.
Yeah.
But it's got to start with your county before country. Get your county in order. First, get your home in order. And then you work on your neighborhood. Then let's work on the county, right? So this is doable. And more people need to hear that. This is doable. This country's not done for over my dead body.
Right.
If we all take ownership.
Well, that's what Dan Bongino shares all the time. He lives up Martin County. Mm-hmm. And he says, everybody always focuses on the presidential election and, who's going to be the governor. And he's like, do you have any idea who your local officials are?
Right.
Have you voted ever in a local, general election or whatever the case is,
Mm-hmm.
And when he said, I hadn't at the time. And I was never really that involved in politics, nor am I today.
Yeah.
But over the past few years, obviously, have become more and more kind of open and just listening and stuff. And I'm like, wow, it makes sense. And I started getting more involved. Well, I mean, voting.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you're right. And I think that correlates with what you're doing, start with your own backyard first. And yeah.
Love your neighbor.
That is it. That's it. Yeah. Love your neighbor for sure. Ben, is that it? You good?
I'll try and be done now.
All right. Well, you guys could talk after. I don't know. One of my SD cards is probably going to fill up or,
I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah. Appreciate you coming on.
Great, man.
Definitely can have you back on. Okay. People, if they're interested, where can they find this or find you, or if they want to get involved in Primal in some capacity?
Yeah, the best. So two ways. I'm on Instagram at Primal Virtues. Primal Virtues. I got a lot of free content there, videos, blogs, all that stuff. And my website is spelled funny, but it's www.thrive.co. It's THRIIV.co. And if you're looking for Primal on my website, you'll see a tab Primal Men, and you can just click on that. I've got all the different options and even future dates for some of the trainings. So yeah, have at it.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Johnny. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, it's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.